Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the J2 Town Podcast. I'm your host, Jaden. Today, I'm here with Chris Goforth of 929 The Game, Atlanta Sports Radio. He is one of the guys who covers the Falcons there, so we appreciate him coming on to talk Atlanta football with us today. Thank you, Chris.
Hey, Jay. Good to be able to visit with you. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. So about Atlanta, obviously they went 7-10 the past 3 years. Fire Arthur Smith, and now they get Raheem Morris, so new coach, new quarterback, Kirk Cousins, blah blah blah. So just look at the team overall. How would you grade the draft, the offseason so far for them? Looking at them right now.
Yeah, well, if you're talking about giving a grade, man, I just think that the Falcons have gone out and they've made themselves better at the most important position on the field, and that's the quarterback spot. And they did. There is a tremendous upgrade from what we have seen the last couple of years compared to what Kirk Cousins can be. So overall, I think you have to like the moves the Falcons have made. Kind of overhauled things a little bit. I don't want to say overhauled. How about added a couple of key pieces at wide receiver through free agency? You've brought in a new offensive coordinator. That may be a little bit of a question mark right now. I think maybe we're going to see how that works. But if you're going to go pluck a guy off the coaching tree, I think the guy in LA is probably where you want to go grab somebody from. And that's what they did. So overall, I think you got to be pretty positive. And let's don't forget too, Jay, there's still a little money left underneath the salary cap that, the Falcons may still be able to add a couple of pieces here. I don't think it's going to be anything major, but they've still got the ability to be able to add a couple of guys here between now and when we actually get this season started.
Yeah, absolutely. Because like you said, they need to upgrade the quarterback spot. Desmond Ridder just couldn't get the job done, so get him out of here, and you bring in a guy like Kirk, who is probably one of the better options on the market. So it's like, it was probably your best case scenario getting him in there, a vet, who's played really well in this league. So, now, of course, they take Penix with their first pick in the draft. A lot of people, as covering the team and everything around here, a lot of fans not too happy about that. What was your personal opinion on them taking Michael Penix there?
So, well, I'll tell you, I wasn't exactly shocked when it happened. And I think there were a couple of things that, boy, hindsight's 20/20, right? And if you go back and watch Terry Fontenot's press conference that it was either Monday or Tuesday, the week of the draft. I think it was on Tuesday. But go back and watch Terry Fontenot's press conference when he talked to the media that day. Because there's a couple of things. Number one, and he has said this from day one, since he got here, going back to his very first draft, we're going to take the best available player. And that's something that's how they ended up with Bijan Robinson. It's how they ended up with Drake London, so on and so forth. Draft the best available player. That's the first part to this. Second part of this is he also said the Falcons would not reach based on need. Okay. Now, where was the first defensive player? And everybody says, you should have gone defense. You should have addressed the edge position, pass rush, etc. So, Jay, where was the first defensive guy drafted in that first round? You had to wait a while, right?
Yeah.
So, with the Falcons at number 8, then we're not going to reach for a guy from 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 and take him at number 8. That wasn't going to happen. So, there's two things. And then the third thing is the fact that Arthur Blank, the owner of the team, and this was reported by everybody, right? Like all the major talking heads that cover the NFL had brought up the fact that Arthur Blank had said he wanted a succession plan in place at quarterback. Who is going to succeed and follow Kirk Cousins at quarterback, right? I think when you put those three things together, all the signs pointed to the Falcons drafting a quarterback. I think if they don't take Michael Penix at 8, he probably doesn't make it past 10 based on the information that we now know with the number of teams that were trying to move up to get him. So I think that's part of it. Now, in terms of what this looks like for this team, Penix is a guy that started from day one in college football. He was a starter at Indiana. He transfers out. He was the starter when he transferred to Washington. So he's a guy that has played a lot of football. He's not a guy that, kind of rode the pines and carried the clipboard for a couple of years and then had one great year and shot up the draft charts. He's been a guy that has played a lot of football over the course of his college career. So the idea that you get a guy, and people want to talk about his age, 2 years, he's going to be 26 years old.
Yeah.
And at 26, he will have sat behind a very experienced quarterback, a guy that I hope he will, that there won't be the Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre type situation where Favre wanted absolutely nothing to do with Rodgers. And some of that was, Rodgers' fault. What's the story about the first day of training camp that Aaron Rodgers comes in in the cafeteria at lunch and sets his tray down in front of Brett Favre and says, how you doing, Grandpa? That's if I'm Michael Penix, I don't approach this in that way, and I don't think he will. You sit behind a guy like Kirk Cousins, you're going to learn a couple of things, right? I think that's got to be key for him. And also, too, let me remind you, similar situation, not exact, a little different, similar situation, 30-something years ago in San Francisco when the 49ers brought in Steve Young, who had played in the USFL, had success there with the LA Express, had gone to a woeful Tampa Bay franchise for a little while. And Steve Young comes in. He sits behind Joe Montana. Steve Young did not become an NFL starting quarterback, a National Football League starting quarterback, until he was 30 years old. I think it worked out pretty well for Steve Young. So I am not going to get so caught up in the idea that this guy at 26 is going to take over as the Falcons quarterback, because that's what I think we're going to see, Jay. I think Kirk Cousins is here 2 years. And I think Cousins will be the guy for the next 2. And then after that, I think the window is going to open for Michael Penix to be able to slide in and becoming become the starting quarterback. I will say this too. I have gotten, as a guy that works on the Falcons radio network. And so I've got to find something to talk about, right? During those preseason games. Last couple of years, we haven't seen the starters play a whole lot during the preseason. I don't know that we're going to see a whole lot of them this year under Raheem Morris, but I think when the backups get on the field, whether that's Taylor Heineke, who's got to feel like he's playing for a job, right, or Michael Penix at quarterback, I think there's going to be a reason to pay attention and watch the Falcons in the preseason, or listen, as the case is, to the Falcons in the preseason this year.
Yeah, definitely for sure. Yeah, man, you hit on the nail. I mean, I think they made a great move taking Penix. Because you look at it, looking at the draft the next couple of years, I don't think quarterback wise it's that interesting. It's not that appealing. So I feel like this was probably the best chance to grab one.
Well, and let's take a look from the other angle to this is, if you're Terry Fontenot and you look at this roster, you got to feel pretty good about your chances of being able to make the playoffs.
Right.
If he wants to keep his job, the Falcons probably need to be drafting in the 20s the next couple of years, not drafting number 8. You talked about the upcoming weak quarterback class. When your owner says, we've got to have a plan in place for what next, I don't think Arthur Blank enjoyed these last 2 years. I think he was as frustrated watching the just absolute abomination that was the Falcons quarterback position the last 2 years. I think he hated as much as we as fans did. So with that said, when the owner says, you better have a plan, we're not going through this again, okay, well, we think we're going to be a playoff team. This is going to be our best chance to get a guy. Let's don't take a third round guy again. We did that. We gave it a shot. It didn't work. Let's go get a guy we feel confident in. And I think that's what they got in Michael Penix. I think you bring up a good point, right? I think that's the other side of this coin. You don't plan on being able to draft at number 8 again, hopefully for a long time. And if they are back at 8 again, Terry Fontenot may not be the guy making that choice.
Yeah, you're right. He might not be. So the goal is to not be drafted at number 8 in these next couple of years. You want to be low rounds, low picks. But yeah, so like I said, that's just something I think about too, and I tell people you don't know what it's going to look like the next couple of years at the quarterback spot. I mean, people talk about Shador next year, but it's not. It doesn't look that good to me when I look at the board over the next couple of seasons. So I think now is the best chance for them to grab their future QB. So yeah. But you mentioned the playoffs. What do you think the Falcons need to do now that they got a quarterback, they got some offensive additions? You can talk about those as well, where they can make the postseason.
Well, you just talked about the idea that this team has won 7 games the last 3 years. Mm-hmm. I'll remind you that these last 3 7-win seasons, this team has gone into the month of December in playoff contention. Okay, it has been kind of a late season fade, if you will, that has really cost them. So I think for this year with the upgraded quarterback, and is there any reason this offense won't be better? You talk about the offseason free agency additions, and you put those guys with Kirk Cousins at quarterback, obviously another free agent pickup, Kyle Pitts, Drake London, and Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson. There's enough weapons there offensively that if guys stay healthy, if the offensive line continues to make that progression, and I do think they've gotten better the last couple of years, if they can continue on that path, then there's no reason to think this offense should be pretty good. We'll see defensively what this team looks like. I think with Jesse Bates back there, this team is going to be better. They've got to be able to get more takeaways. People want to talk about the sacks. They got after the quarterback much better last year than what they had the last couple of years. What was missing last year for the Falcons is being able to get the takeaways. If you're able to come up with another interception in a game or two late in the year, Arthur Smith may still be here as the head coach, and we may have a completely different conversation today. It didn't happen for him. Defensively, I think they got to improve in the takeaway category, come up with a couple of more turnovers, because I think this offense has a chance to score points. Now, with all of that being said, in terms of what the playoffs look like, that's got to be the expectation going into this year. That's what Vegas thinks. Vegas has got the Falcons listed as the favorite in the NFC South, or at least they did. I haven't looked at, the Vegas lines in the last week or two, but, after the signing of Kirk Cousins, the Falcons moved to the top in terms of the favorites in the NFC South. They should be. The idea of winning the division, getting into the playoffs, dare I say, host a playoff game, I think all of that should be it. And once you get in the playoffs, hey, you take your shot and see what happens at that point. But I think that should be for this team, should be the absolute bare minimum of expectation. Win the South, get in the playoffs, have that home game, and at that point, man, take your chances. Yeah.
I mean, on paper, they have a talented team. They kind of have been the last couple of years on paper, except for the quarterback spot with Desmond Ridder. But on paper, they have a good team. So it's just a matter of them putting it together on the field. But I think they can do it. I think they made great offseason additions. Darnell Mooney, Ray McLeod. Offensively, they got the speed, which I think is important. Definitely.
Yeah, that was a big area I thought going into this postseason. Off season was the idea that you had to get faster at wide receiver. That was one of the things you go back and watch last year. One of the things that was missing was that downfield big play threat just wasn't there. I think the Falcons have been able to solve that issue going into this fall. So again, I think the offense is going to be Should be fun to watch. Now, you got a first-year guy as an offensive coordinator calling plays. We'll see what this thing looks like and how they end up designing it. But, again, man, he's got a lot of weapons there to be able to play with. A lot of weapons to be able to play with.
Definitely. So who are some guys that you're looking forward to watching in particular this year for Atlanta?
Offensively, let's start there. How about year 2 for Bijan Robinson? Last year it was kind of a slow process, and he's talked about this. I guess maybe it was with D-Led or somebody here over the last week or two. He's talked a little bit about, kind of being eased into things last year. I don't think that's going to be the case this year at all. I'm about to sneeze, Jay. Hang on. Excuse me. But I don't, doggone pollen, man. It kills me this time of year. But yeah, I think year 2 for him, should be, I think hopefully he picks up and starts this year where he left off at the end of last year. And I think towards the end of last year, the last quarter of the season, we really saw some things from him, some flashes of what he can be. I hope he's got an offensive coordinator now that will use him in a lot of different ways. So, I think he's a guy that can be a bona fide superstar in the NFL. So let's go 1 with Bijan Robinson. If I got to pick a guy off the defensive side of the ball, and I go back to the last, 4 or 5, whatever games of last year, I feel like we saw Zach Harrison kind of start to turn the corner a little bit as a player, as an NFL player. I hope he picks up on that and continues forward with that. And the other guy that I think you have to watch for, especially in the preseason, who is TQ Graham? Because Taquan Graham now, look, he's been around for a little while. He's battled through some stuff. I get it. But at some point in time, he has got to show up and make plays or he's not going to be here. So he is another one of those guys. I want to see what he does. I want to see what he turns into over the course of this preseason and then, going through the season. Those are 3 guys to me that stand out. We can talk about, A.J. Terrell, Richie Grant being another guy. What's this new defensive scheme? I think Richie Grant has been maybe at his best when he plays down closer towards the box, closer towards the line of scrimmage. I don't know how much they're going to do that with the safeties in this new defense. So I think Richie Grant is another guy to watch out for as well. I think there's some really pivotal, it's a really pivotal year for a lot of guys that are year 2 and year 3 with the Falcons, where you got to kind of see where you are and where you're headed. And so, those would probably be the 4 guys right now that I feel like you want to keep an eye on, through camp and then through the start of this season.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with definitely all those guys. Looking forward to how they do next year, especially Graham and Zach Harrison, because we need them on defense to step up. As well as another person, I would say AJ Terrell also. I'm looking for him to continue to elevate his play because we're going to need him to. So on the outside, so hopefully he can do that for us.
Yeah, he's got to continue to play like one of the best corners in the league.
Yeah.
You got to have that guy because the guy behind him, maybe the best free agent pickup the Falcons have had in a long time in Jesse Bates. I mean, that guy was fantastic last year. And I thought the Falcons really kind of stole one in DeMarco Hellams. I knew him from his days at Alabama, but he was a late round pick last year who, hit a stretch there where he played really, really well for the Falcons throughout part of last year. So there's some guys behind A.J. Terrell now. It's not going to be all on him, but you need to see him step up and again, play like we all think he's capable of. And that's be that, that lockdown corner that the Falcons need on the outside.
Yep, definitely. So, I agree with all of that, what you just said. So hopefully the Falcons can put together next year and we can, we'll see what happens. But yeah, Chris, that pretty much will wrap us up for today's show. We appreciate you coming on. Like I say, Chris Goforth, guys, on the Atlanta Falcons Radio Network. So obviously around the team a lot. He's got a lot of great insight information. So we appreciate him coming on, spending his time with us. Thank you, Chris. Again, we appreciate it.
Anytime, Jay. Good to be with you, man.
Yes, sir. And we will see you guys next time.